Hello, everyone. Welcome to another broadcast by the Midwestern Marx Institute for Marxist Theory and Political Analysis. I'm joined here today by my brother and comrade in arms, Noah Krashevic. How you doing,
Hey,
Noah?
everybody. Hey,
We're
everybody.
gonna.
How's it going, Carlos?
It's going good. We're gonna be talking today about Cornel West's move to the Green Party. We're gonna talk a little bit about RFK Jr. and his backtracking of his comments on Roger Waters. We're gonna do this in the form of a reaction to an interview that Chris Hedges did recently with Jimmy Dore on the Jimmy Dore Show. Then we're gonna switch to talking about a Rocket Money ad that Noah recently saw, which is basically a subscription that helps you get rid of unwanted or unused subscriptions. And we're going to see what sort of themes can we pull out from these ads and from these services that help us understand how capitalism has transformed in the last few decades, and what importance does that transformation have or needs to have in our analysis of capitalism. And then lastly, we'll touch in a connected manner to the subject of the reproletariat, which is, of course, the theory in the Institute that Noah has been developing for quite a while now. So, and I think it's absolutely fundamental to understanding our current context and our current struggles against capitalism and the demographics of socialist organizations, et cetera, et cetera. So, we'll talk about all that and much more after the intro video.
Also realize that the problems of racial injustice and economic injustice cannot be solved without a radical redistribution of political and economic power.
There
All
we go.
right.
That intro, man, it gets you going. It doesn't matter how tired you are. It gets you pumped and ready to go.
Yeah, I actually came directly from my workout to this right now because by the way, apologize to everybody who was waiting. I screwed up the times. We're no longer in the same time zone, and I am old and feeble. So there you go. And I was working out. I was getting my pump on, as my son would say. And I here we
He
are.
was, he was curling a barbell with a couple 45-pound plates on each side, and he's calling himself feeble. This man is a liar.
Uh, I mean, yeah. So I was actually listening to MLK's speeches as I was lifting today
Mm.
because he pumps you up, and you can picture his face the entire time, like the intensity and the passion he says everything with. It really gets you going. Yeah. I mean, that's how I do it.
It's such a shame that I mean, it's not a shame because he was right for his political moment, but it would have been cool to like go back in time and take a video recorder and record Frederick Douglass, because everything that you hear about his speeches is that, I mean, you read them and they're phenomenal. I have the Foner collection somewhere around here, but so as an orator, he was so good, and so extremely convincing. So I wish we can go back in time and listen to him. But yeah, that's an essential component of the tradition, the Black prophetic tradition,
Mm.
the leaders of the Black freedom movement. And I think we see that in Cornel West. I don't think I've ever heard him speak and not gotten chills. and it's not like it's not like form divorced from substance. You see some of these politicians that they try to imitate it, especially the politicians of the black bourgeoisie, the black political class that has sold out to poor and working class black folk. They try to imitate the rhetoric, but it's completely devoid of substance. And that's definitely not the case with King and with West. It's not just an embellishment of what's being said. It's an important component, and it works dialectically. The form that the message takes and the message itself, and it's just, at the highest levels, both of scientific rigor in terms of its understanding of society, but also artistic expression and the invocation of artistic cultural symbols within the speaking about various things.
Absolutely. You know where it really, really hit me? Last summer, I went down to Memphis for a bachelor party. A cousin of my wife was getting married. It was just like a bunch of the Union boys went down there with him because his favorite band they do like this Lucero, if you've ever heard of them. They do like a block party event every summer. But what's also down in Memphis is a civil rights museum. And now maybe it's not the appropriate place for a bachelor party to go, but none of us could not go there. And so, it's an amazing place, an amazing museum. There's a few things where, they don't, there's a huge picture of Henry Winston, not a single mention of the Communist Party. They take the Marxism out of Du Bois, all the kinds of stuff. But there is like this, it's in the hotel where King was murdered. And they have his hotel room set up precisely as it was that day. And in it, there's like this sort of like low lighting and a three-dimensional almost looking like sort of set up in it with him, and you play a speech and you get chills. It's phenomenal. Like I've never been so inspired as sitting there, like with just this facsimile of King talking. But something interesting happened, and we don't have to get into it. It's a short story though, if you want to hear it. Okay, cool. We were in maybe the second room of the museum, and there's like so many people there, and obviously it's mostly black people. Memphis is a very black town too. So it's me and my buddy Frank standing there, like reading like a list of abolitionist slaves that went up and joined the actual movement in the North, right? And this young woman, maybe in her 20s, comes up to me and she says, I don't mean to offend you. I don't want to bother you if you don't want to talk, but I don't get many opportunities to talk to white people. And I'm just wondering what it feels like being white and standing here now. And my first reaction was to look at my buddy and go, God, don't say anything stupid. Right. But it made me think, right? How did I feel? And so I answered her and I said, the first thing I feel is a sense of tragedy of what's happened. And then I feel a sense of the brotherhood of man. I feel a sense of togetherness that you and I are standing here now together. And respect and admiration for the strength that your people have had to have, that had forced on them throughout the history of this country to be where we are now, right? And it also made me feel a kinship with her and everyone there based on, what's happened to my people with the Holocaust and pogroms and the Nazis coming to exterminate all of the Slavs. And so I told her this, and she just said thank you and went back to her group. It was fantastic. There was no like wokeism or trying to shame or nothing, just a very earnest conversation between two people at this like very important and solemn place,
That's wonderful, and it reminds me of especially the message of unity and the emphasis of like there's points of reference that we have in our past and our ancestors of oppression that tie us together, and that that really emphasize the common humanity and the common project for the struggle of a mode of life, a world that brings out the best in humanity, that sets up the conditions for humanity to flourish and not to be stifled by the interest of profit and by warmongers, et cetera, et cetera. So it reminds me of the Baldwin quote that Dr. Montero brought up in the first interview we ever did with him, which is that you're only it's something along the lines of, you're only white because I'm black, because you have made me
Oh,
black, or something like that.
yeah, I think it is. You can only be white because you need to have me as black.
Right. And it gets at the essence of like race, which is a
Mhm.
social construct, which it's necessarily relational. Um, and once you're able to identify yourself with these struggles, you're able to begin to break through these categories of, for instance, whiteness, which is I think perhaps a little less about the skin color, more about like power relations, and economic relations and relations of dominance. And if you can stand in solidarity with the struggle of oppressed and exploited working people, you begin to break through those categories. Not fully, of course, but you can begin to do that. And yeah, and it also gets back at the fact that if you see this tradition, not in the narrow sense in which it's usually reduced to by sections of the more woke bourgeoisie, which is that this is just black history or
Mhm.
black American history. But if you see this as American history, but also as universal history, as MLK being not just an American hero, but a hero of humanity, a world historical individual. I mean, there's Martin Luther King centers in Cuba where they study his thought and how he blended, this tradition of the Black prophetic tradition with, the blend of Christianity and radicalism and the struggle for social justice. Like, he's a serious intellectual figure who was the head of a very serious freedom movement that produced a very real and profound transformation, a political revolution in the country that we live in, and inspired people abroad, as he was at the same time inspired by people abroad, because the dialectic of national and international was always present. So when you see this, not as, oh, it's this separate tradition, the black tradition, but you see it as the American tradition, and you see yourself as a part of that, as a part of that section of humanity that is fighting for human emancipation. It becomes
Mhm.
less of, he's one of you guys that I am in solidarity with, and more, I'm in that group as well. I'm in that tradition. I'm in that struggle, and it's easier to find the points of commonality with people when you think of it in that form.
1000%. And we're going to get to this later, but I touch on this subject in the theory of reproletarianization, that the largest demonstration in our country's history was when George Floyd was murdered by the state. And the significance here is that in the past, this would have been, a Black American that was murdered by the state. And some, the more advanced sections of the white working class would stand in solidarity. But this was the regular white working class, places that had never, ever protested before in the entire history of the country, standing up and saying no, because not it was one of them that was killed, it was one of us that
Mm.
was killed. They saw they saw Floyd as more similar to them than their boss, right? And this is the edge of class consciousness. This is the divide that was the color line that Du Bois, talks about.
It
And
was the slogan was, I can't breathe. I
yeah,
can't breathe. And the people that were participating in it, they felt an affinity with that. And of course, there is an affinity because police violence is not limited to an issue of poor and working class blacks. It's an issue of all poor and working class folks, although it's disproportionate, of course, in the black community. But there's a natural point of commonality there. And the fact that the slogan wasn't like, he couldn't breathe or black people can't breathe, but I can't breathe.
mhm.
Uh, shows this level of universality that's embedded in the particular individual of George Floyd's murder.
I also want to, just before we go to our planned schedule, I want to point out that that speaking of this sort of thing, and King and Du Bois, in American history, the black proletariat has been the leading edge of our working class, and therefore the sort of symbol of the entire nation as it becomes a nation at the most important times of our history and throughout a lot of it. It's not just Floyd, it's King, it's throughout all of this. It represents the best of the US that was genuinely able to bring everyone else forward. King's movement changed relations in this country forever. Mm-hmm. And that is the most important thing you could think of.
Absolutely. And it reminds me of like when Marx is searching for, he has this abstract desire for universal emancipation, for freeing humanity away from, the bonds of poverty, alienation, etc. But he's still looking for like what the historical subject, right, that can act as the substance subject of history in a very, what's the concrete force that could do that? And then he finds it in the proletariat, specifically in one of the two articles that he comes out with in 43 or 44, which is on the Jewish question, goes together with a critique of Hegel's philosophy of right introduction. And I think it's the latter, if I recall correctly, where he introduces that idea. But the point is that in order to have emancipation through a specific force in society, and the meaning emancipation for all, and not just how it was with bourgeois emancipation, where it was in the name of all in a universalistic sense, but it was actually the emancipation of the bourgeois class and the emancipation of capital. In order to have that universal emancipation, your historical subject needs to be the one on whom all the worst evils of the system are compounded. And in the US, that's been undoubtedly the black worker, right? The enslaved proletarian, as Du Bois would say, that has had to face not just exploitation, but super exploitation historically, oppression, lynching, racist violence, et cetera, et cetera. And it's been, empirically demonstratable. I'm not sure if that's a word.
Demonstrable?
Yeah, demonstrable. Yeah. There you go. It's empirically demonstrable that it's been at the forefront of the struggle for higher forms of democracy since at least the Second American Revolution, the Civil War, in other words.
And it's brought the rest of the people forward. I think people often underestimate the importance of the second and third revolutions. But we got a really good question here from Eugene V. Dabbs, which is a fantastic name. He says, I don't want to sound like a wet blanket, but couldn't the size of the George Floyd protest have been due to the lockdowns? People weren't working and were more upset than normal. Yes, absolutely. The conditions around us are what create us. However, that doesn't draw any significance away from the protests themselves. And I would even call them more than protests. They were uprisings. Yeah. If there had been an organized vanguard at that point, it could have been turned into something more revolutionary. Yeah. The problem was that the problem of the left, the purity fetish and middle class sort of prejudices of all of these mini organizations, all sort of crab bucketing each other, But that's a great question. I like where your mind's at. Always be criticizing, always be thinking,
Right. And I think that hypothetically, we get into dangerous water with hypotheticals, but if that had been something that had happened in 1950, right, where you had TV, you're able to see, the murder of George Floyd on TV, I don't think the white part of the working class would have turned out in the same ways that it did in 2020, right? And so even if you have a pandemic, say you have this horrible pandemic, they would have still not turned out. The fact that they turned out, it's shaped, of course, by that event, but you could have had the same circumstances in another point in American history, and they would have not turned out.
Mhm.
The point is that they still turn, and they've continued to turn out after that. And it wasn't just in the U.S. There was a global eruption against police violence, and specifically racist police violence. And when we speak about the color line and racism, we have the determinate form in the U.S., but it also takes various other global forms. And Du Bois never lost sight of the fact that the color line has a global dimension to it. And the eruptions worldwide show that across the world as well, there's been transformations in the consciousness of people.
Well, I think we don't even really need to stick with hypotheticals. Look what happened when King was murdered,
Mm-hmm.
right? The white working class, parts of it did show up. Of course, the Communist Party was right goddamn there, right? But it was not a significant amount like it was nowadays. The fact remains that before this civil rights political revolution, the dominant social relation between the working class was one of racism and separation. And after was one of constantly growing more and more together and more becoming one people without this gigantic barrier to class consciousness up, right? So this race consciousness was sort of acting like a net for white working class people. And Du Bois goes into this, right? And basically it plays into the what he calls the American assumption that these white working class people felt that they had more in common with their boss than a black worker doing the same job,
Yeah,
right? And now that is not the case. Now we seem to be right on the edge of a massive class consciousness, and what we need is an organized vanguard organization and coalition.
absolutely. And Cobra here makes a good point. George Floyd protest was literally the only time I've experienced enlisted soldiers saying to me, George Floyd is my friend, he's our friend, and they killed him. Only time I've experienced it. And that, we have to, the left undermines the civil rights revolution so
Mhm.
much. And when it does that, it's unable to not just understand that period in history, but also right now. And if you do not have ideological clarity about your current position, if you're working uh, almost backwards from dogmas and doctrines of what ideally capitalism is like or what it was like in the 60s or in the 50s and etc., you're not going to understand the world today and understand how to move forward, understand what coalitions can be built, what forces are the most progressive ones, which ones are not, what forces are trying to divide the people, which ones are trying to unite them, etc., etc. So that's incredibly, incredibly important. But
Well, that's why Lenin says that in order to have a revolutionary movement, you need the most advanced revolutionary theory. Nothing else will do.
yeah, and another good example of the fact that you have this dialectic where there's still racism in bourgeois institutions in certain parts of the population, but it's tipped to the other side is the recent case in Tennessee where the two Congress people, the black, the two, Jesus, the word is slipping. Do you remember the correct word? Uh,
I don't.
there was, and I cited in my essay, so I should remember, but I'm horrible with things. But there was two uh, Congress people within the Tennessee House, and there was like three of them that were protesting with the students against gun violence. The two that were black were kicked out, expelled. The one white lady wasn't. So it was very clearly racially motivated because if they actually cared about the substance of the argument fully, full stop, they would have kicked the three out. But they only kicked the two uh, uh, black guys out. And what ended up happening, like within a week, there was so much eruption from around the country, radicals and milquetoast liberals, et cetera, that they had to bring them back in. So it shows that yeah, there's still institutions there, but they would have gotten kicked out and stayed out in the 50s
Hmm.
and in the
And
60s.
nobody would have cared.
Nobody would have cared, and today they get brought back within a week. So I think it's those moments where it shows, yeah, there's still this thing going on, but look at the change in the balance that we've had. And I think that should make us extremely hopeful for the potential of a united, uh, cross-racial, multiracial working class struggle. And that's how you overcome these issues. That's the paradox. Racist false consciousness hinders the class struggle, but only through the class struggle can it be overcome. And Du Bois makes various comments towards the end of his life about how the greatest force towards overcoming the color line in the U.S. has been unions like the CIO and other worker unions, where working class people have been able to see both white and blacks the commonality of interest that they have as a class. And I think that's still definitely the case, and it's probably even easier for it to be seen as the case today. But uh, we have a really good question here from Ashiya. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. Ashiya
Thank
Watchtill.
you, Ashia.
Thank you for the $10 super chat so much. This is essential for the institute and for all of the projects that we have and are planning on executing as well. But when Cornel West announced his candidacy, I gave him respectable skepticism. Moving away from Nick Brana this early was overall an incredibly intelligent decision. What do you have to say to that, Noah?
Moving right into the planned content, huh?
Yeah, that's what the
Yeah.
first reaction video was on.
Yeah, I think we could do that. I think off the bat, I don't know this Nick Brana guy. I don't know about the inner workings of the People's Party, nothing like that. What I know is that West got attention with them. And while this was a part of this objective motion within our society of the progressive forces, of the possibility of a sort of piece of PSUV Venezuelan party coalition sort of thing maybe forming, I was all about that sort of set your criticisms aside, create this thing, and let's overcome any problems that they may have together, right? Rather than dismissing it as not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems that the People's Party went. So here's the thing. When he announced that he was going to be on the ballot with the Green Party, the way he said it made me think that it was going to be like other sort of third party situations where he runs in wherever he can in different places, right? But the People's Party, whatever social media they have, did not make it seem like that, and said some rather childish things about Dr. West after he announced that he'd be working with the Greens. And so this seems to me that same issue of the purity fetish from the People's Party or whatever their social media team is, because West was going to work with this other group. He was no longer good enough for them. And instead of, saying, we respect you, we love you, we support you, it was childish bickering. That's really all it was.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as we heard Dr. West's announcement, we did a stream the same day. We supported it. We criticized the reactions of the left, that all they focused on was the impurities of the party, and we said, look, I'm sure he took his time to do his research, and he felt like the People's Party was the best party, and whatever, we supported it. And we thought from the beginning, well, if the Green Party has ballot access in 47 states, it might be cool for there to be collaboration, and for when the nomination process is finished in summer 2024 for the Greens, for them to nominate Cornel West. That way, he's got 47 states, and if he goes into that knowing he's going to have those 47 states, maybe he can focus on getting the other 3 states under the People's Party ballot. So that was our position, not like anti-Green Party, but just not anti the idea of Cornel running on the People's Party. But clearly the vast majority of the left did not feel like us, and those are the people whose voices obviously Cornel heard, and he decided to switch to the Green Party, which I agree in terms of party structure and development. It's a more developed party It's going to make the run a hell of a lot easier. Um, and he made the transition. And I think that in the reaction of the People's Party, maybe they proved that some of the claims about the immaturity of the party that were being made were right. If they had reacted like, look, what's important to us is the movement, Cornell winning, getting the word out there, and we're willing to work with everyone. And we realize the Green Party has better circumstances, so if he wants to go that route, we want to help. Had they done that, um, it would have been a slap in the face of the people that were criticizing Cornell for taking the People's Party and just calling that party a joke and infantile and a mess, really. But their reply kind of confirmed that they're not ready for this. They're not taking it seriously. What they wanted was the spotlight to be the party that Cornell makes his run through, and not Cornell actually winning. And that's I think
That's bullshit. I mean, let's just be frank. That's bullshit. I'm sorry to swear. I think, here's the thing. A lot of this, and we'll get into this later in the more theoretical section, but with the change in imperialism, the branding of things is incredibly important on a subconscious level to people. And it's really an incredibly big opportunity that was missed. The only people that know the words "the People's Party" are leftists, right? And maybe a handful of libertarians that, went to anti-war rallies. That's it. It is an unknown. The Green Party, however, is known, and it's known as a terminal junior partner that people see it as a spoiler or that can't ever win. And this affects how people see it. The People's Party, I mean, that's a great name, first of all. Yeah. Secondly, it's an unknown. It had the potential to become anything. If it could fix those problems that the tweets actually, confirmed that it had, the sky's the limit. It could have been a thing we all rallied around. Yeah. We were ready to, and it's not like the Midwestern Marx Institute is small fries on the left. So it's really just kind of incredibly disappointing. However, I also don't want to discount the Green Party. This seems like a logistical choice.
Yeah.
And whatever, it's like I've been saying this quote over and over and over again since West announced. It's from Marx. One real step forward is worth a dozen party programs. We can have all the tiny little micro parties in the world bickering and whining and saying, oh, West is bad because he said this and he doesn't think that. West right now is more important than all of them put together.
Yeah, I agree, man. And what our emphasis is the real movement of history. If the People's Party showed themselves to be, unfortunately, what we had enough openness for them to not be. Whatever. The struggle continues in the Green Party. I think there's better conditions at the level of immediacy for his campaign run with that party. And we're going to, of course, support it and be on the side of the forces that are pushing the class struggle forward. So, and I hope that now the people that weren't going to support because of the party, we'll see where they're at now. Hopefully they do, but if they don't, then the problem was a little bit deeper than just the party.
No, I have seen a lot of people say, "Oh, thank God he's with the Greens now." Now I really like this.
There was a moment where Jill Stein had like 7%.
Yeah, that's huge. And here's the thing. Here's the thing with the real progressive forces, right? Even a loss can be a win, right? We are Marxist-Leninists. We're not under any illusions about reforming the bourgeois system until just over and over until suddenly it magically becomes socialism, right? We are revolutionaries that seek a revolutionary change of the system, an overthrow of the capitalist class. And so what this is, rather than, oh, now we are solely this electoral effort to get this guy elected president and that's everything. No, this is steps and tactics within an overall class struggle. With all that being said, though, do you want to maybe watch the interview on it on Jimmy Dore?
Yes. By the way, as the comment here states, it was Justin Pearson. He was one of the two. He gave really good speeches, but the other guy gave some really good, fiery speeches as well. And Patrick Leslie says if we could converge on the Green Party and convince them to change their name, it would be a game changer. They shouldn't worry. They shouldn't worry about having international solidarity with neoliberal Greens right now. Yeah, that's a really good point because the Greens have internationally really been um,
Horrible.
horrible. Yeah, I was trying to think of I was trying to think of another word for shitty, but a more decent word, but I couldn't think of it.
The Red Party has a good ring to it.
Yeah, the watermelon party. So it's like red on the inside and green. I don't know, but there's that issue is not like not present in the Green Party. Look at Howie Warhawkins,
Mm-hmm.
who the leadership really appreciated and who is cheerleading Ukraine and the NATO forces in this war, unfortunately. But then you have other people like Jamu Baraka and Jill Stein who are not that, who are the complete opposite, and who on the issue I think would be even a little bit better than Cornell because they're not calling like Putin a gangster.
Mm.
But so it's a mixed bag, and hopefully the forces that are sympathetic with Cornell and that are closer aligned to our ideology are the ones that ultimately win out. But yeah, there is
No.
a sort of hippie.
Sorry. I loved this question. Strategically, who do you think should be Cornell's running mate / VP? Who do you think, Carlos?
Um,
I have two names in mind.
I have two as well. Um, I was thinking Chris Hedges might be good, and the other one that I was thinking was, and you might not like this one, but Nina Turner, because she's been tweeting in favor of him and criticizing the people that have been criticizing him for going third party. She has her ties with TYT and
Yeah.
neoliberals.
Actually,
Yeah,
I know her a little bit.
I'm open to her changing. At least she was one of the more radical ones, burner votes with Bernie. So,
well, a good friend of mine ran her campaign. So yeah, and she's nice. She has her issues. She still has one of the coolest quotes from any Democrat ever. She's in that sort of like activist turned Democrat sort of milieu with Bernie, right? Like that sort of thing. And she said that voting for Biden is like eating half a bowl of shit. You're still eating shit. But so my picks would be either Eddie Liger Smith or Carlos Garrido.
Definitely.
I'm not joking about that.
Eddie, yes. Eddie, yes. Eddie would be good.
I'm not joking. I think that would be a perfect running mate. And for like sort of understanding the and compelling the wokes vote, you might want a woman though. Just tactically speaking, they're very surface level on what matters, right? So
well, Jill Stein is there, and she's been on the right side for.
She's all right. Yeah, she's pretty good. She would be a good pick. But here's the thing: like, for that to to really look into who's going to be the VP pick, it has to be a sort of bombshell to get attention.
Yeah.
And Jill Stein would, I think, be too predictable.
That's true.
Someone like deep within the You know who would be great? And I know she's not going to do it, but Angela Davis will be a great running mate.
Yes, that
Um,
would.
you know, we
Yeah,
have our disagreements with her, but she's a fucking legend. You know, she
yeah.
has done so much in this country.
But she's 80 years old. And
That's the thing. I mean, yeah, she yeah.
if she's got the energy, it'd be like a great like. Well, I'm at the last part of my life. Let's go back to to the roots. Uh, that would be amazing. But I don't think she would be into it. She's been very pro the Democrats for the last couple decades.
Yeah, yeah, unfortunately.
I'm trying to look through the comments. We have a ton of them. But I think we got a new super chat. Oh, it's the same comrade. Thank you for the super chat again. Change the name, keep the color. It'll look good in contrast to the red and blue on the TV. Yeah, I could dig the. I don't wear green much though. I don't know, but yeah, I don't think they'll ever consider like seriously changing the name of the party uh,
They
because
will always be the Green Party. The point is, though, that it's not the Green Party that we're interested in here. It's the
right,
progressive forces and what can be built around this figure and movement.
that's what
Um,
was so good about the People's Party. It was an
mhm,
amazing name for just rallying the people.
right? The only better name I can think of is the Communist Party. You know, but I don't think we have anyone able to run with him. So
I don't even think that the. I shouldn't say that. So I'll withhold the
Tom's gonna yell at you.
Garland Nixon. Garland Nixon would be a nice Jesse Ventura. Good. Asada Shakur. Yeah, I think maybe for the 2028 run, if he wins in 2024 and pardons her and tells her, come back if you want, baby. Um,
That would be really cool.
Dr. Montero as a VP. What do you think?
I think that would be really interesting.
Oh my
Really
God.
interesting.
The conversations would be amazing. Just
Like
to hear
hearing
them.
those speeches,
Mm,
they're just both such compelling speakers.
yeah.
Um, I I don't know, man. I I I really like Eddie. I'm not gonna lie. If I'm not like being in all seriousness, if it were in any way possible, I would put Eddie in there. I'm
And
not joking about
he
that.
would fill a gap that I think Cornell has, and that the
Hmm.
Green Party has, and that most leftist forces have organized groups, parties, which is that they are not good at prophilicity, at
Hmm.
profile building. And Eddie is the master at profile building. This man has constructed a TikTok of 500,000 followers, got banned, brought it back, did a new one to 200 something, and just keeps getting banned. But he would be amazing with with the social media side of things and the profile building, profile
Yeah.
curation, and if he had like some money behind him that could push his stuff, put ads out, it would just blow up the campaign.
Hmm.
So maybe we should do that. A petition to have Eddie be the VP. Uh,
You
I
guys
think
can do that. You guys
yeah,
tell them you want Eddie.
groups like RBN and the Midwestern Marx Institute. I do think that groups like ours should be heavily involved in these campaigns, and hopefully trying as best as we can to uh, make Cornell see our side of things on the issues that there's disagreements, the China and Russia issue. Um, but yeah, I definitely do think that at least as individuals, we should try as much as we can to be involved in Cornell's campaign. And he promised the RBN folks that he'll be on there. I think once a month to be held accountable. So that's
That's
fucking huge. So
huge. Now, here's my thing. And I haven't seen that interview yet. I'm going to listen to it tomorrow at work. But if it were me and he said that, I would say That is absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much. However, we're going to hold you to this
Oh
because
yeah, they said that.
AOC promised us the same thing
Mm-hmm.
and did the opposite. So if you do that, you will win the support of the people forever.
I
Like
think Nick,
actually going to the people and saying, "How can I improve? What do you
you know,
want?" You
that's
know?
Nick and Jay. I think they even asked. They told him like, "We're gonna hold your feet to the fire," and he was like, "Please do." That's why I want. That's why I want to do this. So, and I mean, what's AOC or even Bernie compared to a Cornel West?
Nothing.
It's
I mean,
just someone
AOC may as well be CIA. Let's be real. She has a
freaking
very
crazy.
suspicious past. She went directly into a CIA agent, like, basically
Yeah.
training program in college and like all this weird stuff. She's not just a bartender from Queens.
Mm,
Um, West has like a decades long history of being in the movement.
yeah.
So you just can't compare the two at all.
Right. It's a man of such integrity too. So
Mm.
that's very important, especially in light of. We'll talk about it when the video comes up.
Yeah, yeah. We
In
should
light
get
of
to
the
that
RFK
too.
thing, but we have one more super chat from Ashley Herbert. Uh, it's
Thanks,
interesting to hear
Ashley.
responses to Cornell. Just one L, by the way. I think the two is the school.
Mhm.
Um, People blame third parties, but working class people are increasingly looking away from the two parties. Yes, I think 40 something% of um, the American voting base is independent. 29 is Democrat. 27 is Republican. That means the vast majority of the American people are like, empirically, verifiably not in favor of the two party system. And statistic after statistic, it's like 19% the people that feel like their representatives represent them and that like Congress, and like over 60 something% of people who are, poll after poll, tired of both parties and who would like to see a third party. So
Yep.
the conditions couldn't be riper.
Well, here's the thing. Every time you talk about like, hey, running as the Green Party, running in the Communist Party, etc., people go, "You're just going to take votes away from the Democrats." And I go, "Yes, that's the idea. Of course we are. We don't want Joe Biden to win,
But
right?"
socialism comes about when you vote for, liberal fascists and imperialists. You didn't know that, Noah? That's
Yeah,
what
that's
like,
where that's where
communists should be doing, endorsing Democrats and financing the part of the American fascist turn that's less, that's a little bit more woke, that has their fascism conjoined with the pride flag and all that shit. So,
I
uh,
totally forgot that book I read by Lenin called "We Need to Vote for Kerensky."
mm.
Remember that one? That was a good one.
Yeah, he's very clear that, there's these two sides to the bourgeoisie, the liberal and the conservative. We should always ally with the liberal one. We should never try to break that. That's how socialism comes about, when you ally with the liberal side of the exploiting class. That's what socialism is all about. It's the struggle to uplift the liberal bourgeoisie. Um, Obviously, this is all not true. We're joking. But Hedges and Cornell sounds good unless there's strategically someone better than Hedges. Yes, I agree. Someone had mentioned up here that who do independents like? It'd be cool to get some. I don't know if there's empirical data on it, but um, empirical data is going to be important, I think,
they
in
they
politics.
don't like doing those kind of polls.
Mm,
Um, if it's outside of the two party system, they try to sort of frame methodology to push people into it. That's
yeah.
why the numbers right now are so significant.
And
Um,
they're still coming out. Like, I don't know if you saw that poll where it was like third parties in general.
mhm,
Uh, and it was like 20 something% of the people were in favor of it. And that's just like, I wonder how many people haven't even heard of West yet. There's so much
right.
work to be done. So it's definitely a win is possible. There's a bunch of liberal pundits telling you that's
You
not
know,
possible.
you know how many people. So I work as a carpenter, as almost everyone watching this knows. And most of my direct coworkers are all basically just waiting for the Communist Party, right? That's where they're at now. They're like, as soon as you guys get it together, we are there to support you. But there's other sides of it. There's other trades we work with. There's the entire office, that kind of stuff. And you know how many people read my article on West and were like, I had no idea we could have this in America.
Mm.
And I was like, we can, and we do now. Let's get this shit done. There's like office workers who, last year would have been telling, or not last year, maybe before COVID, would have been telling me this kind of thing is crazy, going, we got to get change. Let's do it. We're with you,
By the way, Eddie's not 35, so.
That's true. I guess that I'd be the only one able.
Or Tom. We can throw Tom up there.
I highly doubt that Dr. West would want me as a running mate.
Exactly, brother. You guys are doing a speech together, and you just see Noah pull out a pen and point it at Dr. West. It's like, is he going to shoot him? What's he doing? Somebody stop that man.
Stop calling Putin a gangster.
Oh, man. All right, brother. Yeah, I wouldn't be able to be a VP either. I'm too young.
I could just change the law, executive order, baby. Yeah, wait, yeah. I'm not the president in this scenario. I'm VP. Sorry.
Oh man, but all right, let's get to watching this video. It's Chris Hedges on the Jimmy Dore show. I think it was from yesterday, and it's a conversation about how he got Cornel West to go through the Green Party ticket, and a few other things. I think there's a good comment on there by on RFK Jr. that I think we should address, because there's quite a few comrades that are still enthralled within the charisma of RFK, even after he showed himself to be a weak-spined little. I'm gonna not finish that statement. But,
Christopher Romero here is absolutely right.
Noah as VP would surpass
memes of me as VP. Yeah.
Those would be the campaign shirts. It'd be Cornel West doing something cool at the front, and then Noah
just
pointing at him with the pen.
All right. By the way, let me just say, I don't really care what people's opinions on Jimmy Dore. Man, it is storming like crazy here. I don't really care what people's opinions on Jimmy Dore are. We put the purity fetish away, right? This is objectively an awesome logo. Look how cool that is. Anyway, let's watch.
So let's move on now. We'll talk about Cornel West's. So he originally announced that he was going to run with the People's Party, and now he's changed his mind, and he's running with the Green Party. And West said he decided to run as a candidate for the Green Party to try to build a broad, united front and a coalition strategy. He said in his campaign launch video that his candidacy would be centered around healthcare, living wages, housing, reproductive rights, and de-escalating the destruction of the planet and democracy. He said he is running as a third-party candidate because neither party wants to tell the truth about Wall Street, Ukraine, the Pentagon, and big tech. That was a big one that he said Ukraine in there. That was a really big one. West faces long odds with his third-party run, but polls showing that many do not want President Biden or former President Trump to be their party's nominee could open up a greater support for the alternative candidate. So now they're already coming at him.
Yeah. Oh, the very liberal left-wing Nation magazine.
Noah,
and then, of course, MSNBC says shit. Cornel West leftist.
You're going to have to turn it down on your end, because I had to scream like 4 times.
Yeah, my bad. It's like really loud back here. There's a storm going on.
Oh.
So my microphone is pointed only to hear right here. So I apologize, guys.
No, I wanted to say that the People's Party, I think it's connected to Dore. I think he was one of the founders, right? And the fact that he's not salty about this shows that there's a certain level of political maturity, and an absence, at least in this issue, of what we've been calling the purity fetish for quite a while now. unlike the people that at least run the People's Party, who were
Mhm.
very infantile about this transition. But Corey Bowers says there are plenty of candidates within the party, especially Howie Hawkins and Angela Walker, that combine Green Party, Socialist Party candidates that ran. Howie Hawkins has obtained officially the name. He changed it in his birth certificate to Howie War Hawkins because he supports Ukraine's effort, which is really the effort of NATO and the U.S. to use
It's Nazi
Ukraine,
collaboration. That's what it is.
right? The Nazi collaboration to use Ukraine in their fight, in their proxy war against Russia. So he would be perhaps the farthest one from a good vice president. Ken.
Mm-hmm.
The farther we can get him away from him, the better.
Yeah, here's the thing on like other candidates and whatnot. They don't have the name recognition of West.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have his record. They don't command an audience like he does. They're not orators like him. So they're just not as good of candidates. You know, they may have amazing politics, and Hawkins does not. I don't know about the other name, but that's sort of, as a presidential candidate, you need to win the people to you. I say this all the time, and I think a lot of leftists sort of don't get it. Being correct is not enough. And most of the time, if you think being correct is enough, you're not correct. Being correct and packaging your correct message in a way people can understand it and agree with it is the winning combination. Now, I just want to say one other thing. I am incredibly disappointed that this article isn't mine. He should be posting my article from Newsweek.
Yeah, with that, we had an article on censorship that we all did, and we had a bunch of people tag Door to get Eddie or one of us on, and no connection yet. So, unfortunately.
Well, here's one. Jimmy, if you're watching, let's talk. Let's talk, brother. You will love us, I promise. Or you may not love me, but you'll love Carlos and you'll love Eddie. They're far better, far superior people to
No. On the contrary.
This presidential bid has right-wing so they're already calling him. So I've laid this out since 2016. It's been obvious to me, and I've been telling our audience that as soon as you get to the left of the Democratic Party or left of a Democrat, they don't engage you in your debate with ideas. They first slander you and smear you, and and then they call you a right winger, and that's exactly what they did.
Right wing DNA.
Right wing DNA. So it's like when Joe Rogan endorsed Bernie Sanders, they call him a right winger. And so they're doing the same thing to Cornel West. And let me just show you this. This is interesting. Only 29% of Americans identify as Democrats. Still fewer, 27% identify as Republicans. 42% identify as independent. It's the largest block of voters. Right. And so saying Cornel West was running as an independent third-party candidate cannot win. That's acknowledging that the system is rigged. We agree, and that's going to change. So that's what he says. So that is kind of an agreement. So let me just get back. There was, when he first announced he was going to run People's Party, now he's running Green. People said you had something to do with that. Did you? And what did you say that changed his mind?
All right, real quick.
He looks red as fuck. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, before they go to what was that?
He looks red as hell.
He looks redder than me right after I was done working out.
Right, just came from a week in the beach.
Right? Oh yeah, that's what he looks like. He looks like he's like at a beach house or something. Anyway, this is something that the purity fetish left does all the time. They say if X right winger likes you, you must be right wing. Everything gets tainted with their right wing brush, rather than us having a class-based message that is concretely, materially speaking, left wing. They go from this set of abstract values they think the left is. And so when we appeal to people they consider beneath them, we must be put down to that level. But what it is is the real left emerging once again, and they're getting left behind, and they're very angry about it. And so the only way they can sort of think to fight us with it is to smear us as right wing. I'm sorry, but saying Cornel West is right wing is absolutely absurd. Anyway, let's listen to what Chris Hedges has to say here.
Yeah, I did. I encouraged him to leave the People's Party, and I set up a meeting with Jill Stein and Ajamo Baraka. Zoom, we were all on a Zoom call, and let them run the pitch, but I supported it.
And what was the idea behind it?
Well, partly having worked with Ralph Nader, I wasn't involved in it, but I was a speechwriter for Nader. I saw all of the impediments that were put up in terms of ballot access. It's expensive. Every single state is different. And the People's Party virtually doesn't have any ballot access. It just wasn't gonna fly. The Green Party doesn't have a lot. And I'm acutely aware that the Green Party is not a well-oiled machine, put it mildly. But at least it has experience, which Cornel doesn't have, of running campaigns. It does have some organization. It needs to be revitalized, especially by younger workers and volunteers. But it is, I think it's 20 states they're already on. And it has an infrastructure. You weren't going to be able to build a viable infrastructure, and I know how hard it is to build it, having watched Ralph do it. And I think it's important that Cornel be on as many ballots in as many states as possible.
I agree 100%.
And there's the reason, right? It is infrastructure and the logistical ability to actually be on a ballot. Now, I don't think that's, as sort of devil's advocate, that's really not as important for me as the message getting out there. I think, yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts, Carlos?
Yeah, well, I think that just to repeat Lenin, although bourgeois democracy might be obsolete from the lens of universal history, it's still not obsolete from the lens of our people. Our people are still definitely involved in the electoral process, and if you can have a candidate like this that is able to get at the people at levels at which you have to work a very long time just from community and workplace organizing to get to, you should do it. It could be a big step forward in the raising of the consciousness of the people. And as far as the party itself, I don't know too much about the Green Party. I went on their website and today, and it wasn't that appealing. But I know there's some leading figures that I definitely think are positive. Such as Chris Hedges, and Jill Stein, and to some extent Nader, and Ajamo Baraka, and a few other people that are, I think, respectable comrades. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what can come out of it. Where it's still too early to see. So I don't want to pass the judgment too soon.
I can't. I just can't.
First it was Yellow Parenti. Now welcome Red Hedges. That'll be a great name for like a show. Red Hedges. And he just shows up red every time.
That could be like his trademark. Like he's just always sunburned.
You walk into his house, he's got a tanning.
Everybody starts calling him red, right? He clearly doesn't have red hair. It's literally just about the sunburn.
Right.
But yeah, I think you're right. I think, some of those figures I feel have more to add than others. I think Baraka, is great. Stein, I'm not as into, but that's okay. We don't all have to love everyone that we work with. And I think that's part of it. That's what needs to happen, getting over ourselves and the notions that we need to agree with everyone on everything as a prerequisite to getting to work has been really hurting us for a long time. And it's time to sort of, put on our adult pants and realize that if we do not get to work, fascism will get here. That it is impossible for society to keep going the way it is. But yeah, let's keep going.
I think the real test will come after RFK Jr. drops out.
Yeah, of course.
And
that's right. That's right. And yeah, I mean, the thing about RFK Jr., and I agree with many of his positions, although not on Roger Waters. I thought that was really sleazy. Not on Israel-Palestine, which looks like he was just reading from a Democratic Party playbook.
Go Red.
And I care a lot about
Here's
that.
the problem with that.
I was
shit.
If that would have happened, like from the start, if his whole thing would have been, well, he's shitty on Israel, on the Palestine question, it would have been horrible, but it wouldn't have been as grave as what we can now see, which is a problem of character, a problem of integrity, because he put a tweet out in favor of Roger Waters not getting shitted on by the Zionist lobby for a literal show that he's been doing for decades that's very clearly anti-fascist, anti-Nazi. And it was a ridiculous situation, and he came out in favor of him through a tweet and then pulled back because of the influence of the Zionist lobby and the people that got to him. And that shows something that you not only shouldn't have as a politician, but as a person, which is being spineless and not being committed to what you claim to believe. And if you claim to be in the side of Palestinian lives, and then the Zionist lobby tells you you can't do that, and you change your position, I'm sorry about how great you are on this issue when it comes to ending the war against Russia. That's escalating us to with potentially nuclear Armageddon. But what guarantee do we have that you're actually committed to that if you just flip-flopped on this issue? So what's the guarantee? What if when people started really attacking you on that, and Ukrainian lobbies start getting to you and calling you a genocide denialist and whatever the hell they call you, are you going to fold like you did with this issue? So that's why it's worrisome, not just the issue itself that he's supporting the apartheid state of Israel, but the fact that he is at least the fact that he's pretending to support it is almost worse than him supporting it. If he's pretending, if he actually sides, like the tweet somewhat implied, the original tweet, if he actually sides with the Palestinians.
Yeah, you can't back down like that. Here's the thing, a candidate that will be called populist in any way, right, that rallies the people to their cause is always, just like any bourgeois politician, is always going to be pressured to serve the bourgeois class by their various institutions and organizations. That's what the Israel lobby is, the Zionist lobby is, right? It is an organization of the bourgeoisie and an organization of the most brutal imperialism. Now, he is supposed to be representing us against them. If he folds the minute they put pressure on him, he's just like Trump was, right? Who talked a big game about draining the swamp, talked a big game about bringing manufacturing back, but the minute he got in office, did none of that because of the pressure of these organizations. And so this is one of the reasons a movement is necessary, right? Because people can fold. People, even, I'm sure RFK is as dedicated as he can be, but it's not enough, right? And even, someone could have had a spine there, and obviously, right? That is a lack of character, like you said, Carlos. But I think that's a tremendous amount of power arrayed against this person, right? So whoever this is going to need to have that spine all day, every day, for the rest of their life. Not just the 4 years they're in office, right? The rest of their life. And that's a big deal. I don't think we think about that in terms of organizations and power, but that's what it is, you know. It's also class interest. Like Trump clearly benefited from raising our taxes and lowering them on financial institutions, for example. I don't know.
Can you put the video at 1.25? I think that might be.
125, you got it.
No. The speed.
Oh, yeah. So I accidentally closed it before. So we're going to have to refind it. I apologize.
It's going to fly. The Green Party doesn't have a lot, and I'm acutely aware that the Green Party is not a well-oiled machine,
There we go.
mildly. But at least it has experience, which Cornel doesn't have, of running campaigns. It does have some organization. It needs to be revitalized, especially by younger workers and volunteers. But it is, I think it's 20 states they're already on. And it has an infrastructure. You weren't going to be able to build a viable infrastructure, and I know how hard it is to build it, having watched Ralph do it. And I think it's important that Cornel be on as many ballots in as many states as possible.
I agree 100%. I think the real test will come after RFK Jr. reps out.
Yeah, of course.
And
that's right. That's right. And yeah, I mean, the thing about RFK Jr., and I agree with many of his positions, although not on Roger Waters. I thought that was really sleazy. Not on Israel-Palestine, which looks like he was just reading from a Democratic.
Look at a little puppy back there. Sorry.
Party playbook. And I care a lot about that issue because I was the Middle East bureau chief for the New York Times. I spent 7 years there and a lot of time in Gaza. And that issue alone will drive me away. Nobody stands up for the Palestinians. So, you know, if I'm all alone, I'll be all alone. And people forget that about Nader, by the way. You know, Nader's parents were Lebanese, fluent in Arabic, Ralph. He's Christian, but his Arabic is, I speak Arabic, it's pretty deteriorated. But I was in a restaurant with Ralph. I go, he's completely bilingual. So, yeah, but I you know, the thing about Cornel is that he has stood for these issues for decades. And I would give Bernie credit in terms of standing with labor. I mean, I didn't, you know, I was as critical of Bernie as you were, but I don't think Bernie was a fake. What I worry about Bobby Kennedy Jr. is that a lot of these positions, I mean, he's been good on the environment, but I don't see that there's a long track record there of fighting these kinds of fights. With Cornel.
Okay, that is really important, right? Mm-hmm. Cornel has a long proven track record. RFK does not. Let's remember, you know, even when he's saying these good things and it could sort of sway some momentum away from the Democrats pushing Biden, he has zero record. He's a fucking Kennedy, right?
Right. I mean, I still think that if I had to pick who I'd prefer to see in the Democratic Party get the nomination, it would be RFK, because he's indubitably better than Biden and Marianne, who are both war hawks on the issue that's, I think, the most pressing today. But that slip of the spine was really worrisome, and it says a lot in an area that I think is very fundamental, sometimes even perhaps a little bit more fundamental than issues, because people can change their mind on issues, but it's hard to build character from one day to the next, and to not be the sort of person who flip-flops because of pressure. So that is worrisome, but he still is the best person, I think, running within the Democratic Party.
Oh, for sure, without a doubt. Would I prefer, you know, him to Biden every single day of the year, you know?
He ain't gonna, you know, he didn't just come to some political opinion because it was convenient or he thought it would sell. I mean, he's openly supporting reparations. I mean, I think white Americans, that's about 19% or something of white Americans supporting. He's going to back down on that kind of stuff. So, but I think, you know, even if you might disagree with Cornel on many issues, and actually,
honestly, I think Cornel could sell white Americans on reparations anyway, especially when, you know, the working class people that have been told that from our ruling class that reparations would actually take money from them rather than these giant corporations. When he tells them that, of course they would support it. Most people would support that. The problem is that sort of mystification, right? That they go, well, actually, it'll come out of your pocket. And they're like, I don't have enough. But clearly that's not the case. And I think West could easily make that clear.
Actually don't have there's not much daylight between me and Cornel. He just has impeccable integrity, and he has fought. I mean, he fought Obama, and people forget that during the Obama years, he was target number one. If you listen to black media, they called him a race traitor and they locked him out, and they were rough. Obama had a thing for Cornel, and he stood his ground, and he will stand his ground now. I mean, we're very close friends and have been for many, many years. I know him inside and out and love him to death. I mean, I can tell you he's real. I mean, I teach in a prison, as you know, and I brought Cornel in, and all my students said, "Oh, Dr. West. Well, you know, the guy's got a full course load at Princeton. He's flying all over the countries. He came into that prison. There weren't any cameras. There wasn't no publicity. Nobody paid him, and he taught a philosophy course in there. I mean, he's the real thing."
Can you pause there?
I really can't wait for the damn primary to be over.
Pause it. Because someone here, Armando, says, what does it say about West's integrity that he jumped ship after getting dunked on? I think you might be seeing that from the wrong angle, because I see the opposite. He was in a party that he founded that would have been the comfortable party that he had already gotten the nomination for. There was no contenders. And he went to a party that now he's got to go through the nomination process. Hopefully he ends up being the candidate. So it's a decision from something that's easy to something that's more difficult for him, simply because it makes the struggle for the candidacy and the movement easier. So at the personal level, it would have been more comfortable for him, I think, to stay with the People's Party. But he didn't, because his concern is not with that sort of comfort. His concern is with actually winning, with taking the struggle serious. And there's no comparing that shift that he made with the sort of lack of courage and weakness and that you see with RFK Jr. on the issue of Palestine.
Yeah, I don't even have anything to add to that. That's perfect.
So we could just get right to the general, and he gets to actually oppose Joe Biden and Joe Biden's unique brand of woke fascism, which
Right.
which is what we're dealing with. We're not dealing with a two-party
Beautiful term from Jimmy there. Woke fascism.
system. We're dealing with a one-party system. I think Cornel can really expose that. That's I think that's such a heartbreaker that
That's
RFK
part of
is
what he's
running for the
missing.
Democratic Party.
He doesn't. He's still not. He's still calling the Democrats milquetoast neoliberals and the Republicans neo-fascists. And I think it would be more correct to speak of both in terms of fascism. And that's one of the things that Nick Cruz from RBN in their interview, he really tried to hammer out with him. Like, you keep making the distinction, but I think they're very clearly both fascistic parties. And
Right.
hopefully, now that he's going to be going on RBN every month, hopefully the folks over there can make him change his mind on that, amongst other things.
Absolutely. And you know what? I would love to talk to him about that, especially. Cleveland is one of the cities that the Democrats have absolutely destroyed. And it's the same sort of woke fascism now. They have their sort of fake progressive mayor in here right now. His name's Justin Bibb. Literally works directly for the real estate cartels. Directly for them. It is wild that happens. But this, I think, is Dr. West's sort of weakest point. Is he frames it as Trump being neo-fascist, and the Democrats are just not good enough to beat him. They can't defend us from this neo-fascism. But the problem is, it isn't even just one or the other, right? It is a changing ideological bourgeoisie that has this sort of institutional fight between the two that creates all of this. It's not one doing policies and the other doing policies. It's the way they relate to each other, right? The both of them are actually one organization, and the way it plays out is precisely how the ruling class wants it to play out. Julie has a good thing here. Did you want to read that?
Yeah, Julius says, I struggle to understand if their support for Ukraine and Israel is due to lack of intelligence or a more sinister agenda. I would hope that it's due to lack of intelligence, but um, I wouldn't be surprised if it's the latter. I mean, all these people are in a class, so um, what's a non-sinister agenda for the bourgeoisie that their whole life is based on plotting how to expropriate people across the world, exploit people, and oppress people for the sake of increasing their profits. That's just a regular Tuesday for them. It's not about sinister planning. It's just what you have to do as a class because you are quite literally, as Marx says in Capital, the personified agents of capital.
I think, and I think this is so. Anytime capitalism sort of falls into these really big acute crises, like right now with the dollar, if the dollar loses a hegemonic place, the financial cartel that rules the entire world from the West is in huge, huge trouble. And the easiest way to sort of re-empower it is to attack Russia, right? They're not as strong as China yet. They're just not. The 90s absolutely destroyed that country. It's a crime against humanity. What happened there was shock therapy and our ruling class. Anyway, that's beside the point. So in times of these acute crises, they have historically always turned to these extreme elements that can become these sort of open terroristic dictatorship of the most chauvinistic elements of finance capital. This was finance capital turning to the Nazi party. It's the same with the Nazis in Ukraine, except on a global scale. And they're using them as a proxy against Russia. That's why it sort of drives me absolutely bonkers when people who really don't know enough yet about Marxism, about Lenin, etc., will try to frame this as an inter-imperialist rivalry, or say, yeah, but Russia's fascist and they're authoritarian. No, we are talking about a possibility of global fascism, and this is the easiest target for them and the most sensical rabid dog that they've sicked on innocent Ukrainian people, first of all, and Russia, more importantly, for them anyway.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's an issue that we've talked about so much. But Sean has a good comment. Yeah, Listen Liberal by Thomas Frank and The Death of the Liberal Class by Chris Hedges. Case closed on the Democratic Party. I was really blown away when Dr. West advocated a Biden vote in 2020. Yeah, I remember the turmoil of it and how many people were like seriously making arguments for like Trump being a fascist and how class struggle was going to be easier under Biden. And I think we even had we might have promoted Biden for the sake of lesser of two evilsism. I know Eddie voted for him. I voted Lariva. I don't think we, as an institute, we made any public comments on it, but or any public endorsement. But it was very easy for people to get tripped up and make a mistake. And I think Dr. West did that. I'm sure Eddie would agree that he did as well. And I'm the pure one. I voted Lariva. So, haha, losers. I stay pure.
Especially if you're in an organization and sort of bound by democratic centralism to vote as a block with the organization. Especially if there hasn't been time for education to take over and get people really up on Marxism so they can overcome the mistakes of right opportunism and Menshevism and straight up infiltrations that could happen within any various organizations. So if people voted for Biden because of this, that's understandable, right? Yeah. You got to maintain discipline. That's incredibly important. But at the same time, fight for that Marxist line and realize that American Marxism is here now. and the right opportunist days are numbered. So you're not going to have another vote for the lesser of two evils situation from them.
Mm. Yeah, I think what was the slogan? Vote against fascism or vote away fascism. Oh my god. What a fucking ridiculous.
Dimitrov is rolling in his grave.
Oh, Jesus Christ. And then they tried to use the example of Bolivia coming back and overthrowing the fascist Jenny Añez, beating them in an electoral victory that showed that the socialists had won the war of positions, the ideological warfare, and had the people on their side. But they tried to make that comparison like, yeah, they beat back fascism. We got to beat back fascism too through Joe Biden. Like,
By the way, claiming victory for a bourgeois party winning an election
Oh,
is
my God.
it is if you did that, right, you have betrayed every single thing a communist fucking stands for.
Yep. There's papers
Saying,
connected.
yay, we won. No, the Democrats won, and you are telling people that that's a good thing. The Democrats are responsible for so much poverty and misery in this country, and I'm so goddamn sick of hearing about them somehow being a lesser evil. No, they're the same evil. It's the same fucking thing. I'm sorry. I'm sort of.
It is.
I got a little.
It's harder to see. It's the evil that's harder to see because it's woke fascism or woke imperialism, woke capitalism, and it's harder to see. And because it's harder to see, doesn't take away the fact that you're still getting fucked. But it makes it. That's the point that Malcolm X used to make, right? It's the difference between a wolf and a wolf dressed in sheep's clothing. The one in sheep's clothing, it's harder to see. It makes it more sinister, not better. What's that Glenn Ford quote? The Democrats are not the lesser evil; they're the more effective evil, because they're
They
the evil
are.
that presents itself as good. But
They're the evil that had CIA agent ads about how diverse and wonderful the fucking CIA is.
mm-hmm. By the way, Battle Cossack says the people who hate Putin would have also hated Gaddafi,
And they
100%,
did.
and they did.
I
Yeah,
remember that era. They
and
would
remember
call him a
Gaddafi.
bourgeois nationalist.
Yeah, Gaddafi had he was perhaps the highest expression of Pan Africanism. He ran the country that was the most advanced in Africa, and he was fighting for things which would have, been horrific for the U.S. dollar and for American NATO imperialism, and that's why he was taken out. And again, the propaganda, the demonization was essential to legitimize the fight against Gaddafi and leave Libya, which is the richest and most efficient government in Africa, leave it in a state that's so decrepit that there was literal open air slave markets after they overthrew Gaddafi. So we have to thank Comrade Obama and Comrade Hillary Clinton for that, and the empire in general. But NATO as well was involved in it. But demonization is so important, and that's why I don't like the language that West uses, gangster. Besides the fact that it's not true, gangster Putin.
Mm-hmm.
It feeds into the demonization that is ideologically essential for the U.S.'s proxy war against Russia.
It does, and it's sad to see. It's really it doesn't. It comes from a place, I think, of just not knowing a lot about Russia, how it works, the culture of the people, their way of being, and why Putin is so popular. It's not just the war.
Mm-hmm.
Putin is popular because he's seen as the man who kneecapped the oligarchs. Or that is what it builds his popularity. And he did. There were a ton of almost feudal privileges that piled on each other during the shock therapy era, and Putin got rid of all of them, right? The reason they sort of, I think one of the excuses they say is, oh, they got rid of term limits for Putin. So he's authoritarian, right? He's a gangster. But no, I mean, come on. FDR was president for how many years? Almost 20? Was it 18?
If you are a socialist and you say that getting rid of term limits is authoritarian, you're not a fucking socialist. Because then Cuba is the most authoritarian country ever, because Fidel was so popular that he just kept on getting reelected, because he was the person who the people loved and who actually represented the interests of the people. Democracy is about representing the interests of the people. It's about demos, kratos, power of the people. Insofar as the people continue to be in power, it's not about one having multi parties. It's not about having different people in power after 4 or 8 years. It's about having the people consistently in power. And if it takes one guy being the head of that for fucking 100 years, it doesn't matter. That's not a characteristic that says yes democracy or no democracy. It's about whether the people are in power and are genuinely represented by that one individual or that various individuals coming in and out of power every 5, 6, 7, 8 years, whatever. That's the argument that they used against Evo Morales in Bolivia to legitimize the coup from the left. Oh my God, he's so authoritarian. He's trying to, give himself the possibility to have another term. It's
They
absurd.
did that for Xi too, for Xi Jinping.
Yep.
And here's the thing: term limits can prevent democracy. That is why we got them here. During FDR's administrations, there were no term limits. They were installed in order for finance capital to put a leash on FDR because he was too soft on communism, right? So think about that for a minute. I also think that, the people want what the people want. If they want a leader for 20 years, 40 years, it is undemocratic not to do it. Don't get me wrong. We're Zhuganov people, right? We support the Communist Party of Russian Federation. But you can't deny that Putin is a very popular leader. Even with all of the huge problems with corruption Russia has, even with all of that, he's still a very popular leader right now. To take notice when Reclaimed guy is agreeing with us.
Reclaimed being there.
Yeah.
A sign. All right.
All right.
Well, keep playing the video, or do you want to?
Yeah, I was thinking it's getting a little late, and you guys know me and how old and frail and fragile I am. I do need to get to bed. So I was thinking maybe we can switch gears to the other subject we have planned. I wonder if I can do this. No? Okay.
I think you have to pull it down and then pull it back up for the other.
Yeah, I do. All right, let's do that then. We're going to share this one instead. So I saw this, and it just seems so typical of the deterioration of imperialism in our era. And here's where we're going to get a sort of more theoretical for everybody. What has capitalism become? Right? It becomes imperialism. But what does imperialism then become? Right? There's always motion and history happening. The issue is that often we are taught to view things in a sort of static way. And even when we're learning Marxism, we're sort of trying to look at the modern world as if it is the dawn of industrial capitalism. And I think that's a big problem. And so that is what reproletarianization is addressing, right? And this is just a really good example of how far gone imperialism is. It's become its opposite, really. It's become everything that capitalism initially overcame. And let's, take a look at this ad, and you guys can tell us what you think.
How many subscriptions are you paying for? Rocket Money finds sneaky or forgotten subscriptions and makes canceling them as easy as clicking a button. On average, Rocket Money users save over $720 a year. Here's how it works. Just open the app. Go to the Reoccurring tab. And here, you can see all your reoccurring subscriptions. Tap on the subscription you want to cancel. Then tap Cancel Now. And you're done. Subscription canceled. No confusing websites, no auto-renew, no long hold times. Want to save up to $720 a year? Don't wait. Get Rocket Money right now.
This is a subscription service to cancel subscription services. That's what this is. This is so...
It has to be analyzed, though. You know, some people have called it a Yanis Varoufakis a transition towards techno-feudalism. I don't think that's correct, because it's primarily something that's related to the sphere of consumption, how it is that we're consuming things. The sphere of production is still generally dominated by the traditional mechanisms of capitalism. It's not the case that, for instance, working people are working with their own instruments of production, producing something, and then giving a part of it to the feudal lord, or then taking the product to the market and selling the product at the market. No, working people are still, the only thing that they have to sell is their labor power. They sell that at the market, and they get exploited in the same ways as it used to be. And now the central difference, I think, is that there's this new way that they're getting exploited more than ever before, and it's through what Marx called in the third volume of Capital, the second exploitation, which is through debt. Working people are incredibly indebted. They're in debt slavery, and that is one of the central differences with now and before. And it's rooted in this tendency of the rate of profit to fall, along with this transition in the 70s towards the full financialization of the economy, especially in the Anglo world. Then, if working people can't buy back the things that they need to survive, how do they survive then? They have to take out debt in order to get a home and other basic necessities, in order to get healthcare, in order to get an education, which is necessary to have a life that is good. Maybe that's debatable, but especially university education. But the point is that when they weren't able to buy back, they were put in debt. And that was how they were able to achieve the buyback. So that's a second form of exploitation, or really a form of slavery, because it's an entitlement to your future earnings. And it can live on even after you die.
Well, and it's just a secondary exploitation. That's what super exploitation is. You're being exploited on multiple levels at once, right? So even your future wages now are the property of someone else because of the debt you are forced to take on, not because this thing is worth more, or this new technologically advanced subscription service is actually has a value that high, but because of asset price inflations, right? Because of the machinations of the financial elites, sort of political back and forth as they try to stabilize the currency, then try to stabilize the financial sector and investment. They can't sort of do both at once. And so what this does is, especially with how low they keep the interest rates for borrowing for them, it raises the necessary cost of these assets. So, the actual value added to, let's say, a burger at McDonald's is a very little, but the price has gone up and up and up and up and up, and that cannot stop. And so debt has to go up and up and up and up and up. And this is a central part of what the reproletariat is. The problem is, back in the day, as people were being proletarianized from the middle classes of old, which was the peasantry, right? Even the smaller manufacturers that were forced to sell to the big capitalists as they became capitalists. There was a rapidly growing industrial sector for them to all go into, and they were proletarianized. In the West, that's gone, right? Because of the contradiction with international capital and us, there's no longer really a proletariat for these people to be put into. And so they get put into this situation where they're in the service industry, basically. I mean, there's others, there's lower professionals and stuff that are part of the reproletariat. But it's these indebted people that are getting thrust out of the old position of stability, right? So in the middle classes of last period, they owned homes they could fall back on. They got equity. They were able to put kids through college, save up. They were doing something other than only selling their labor to purchase the necessities of life that were they're consumed immediately, right? They were able to actually sock something away. That sort of removes the proletarian character from them, right? And so as people fall out of that and back down to the level of proletariat where there is no stability, where they cannot get a wage that can do anything other than buy the necessities of life that are immediately consumed, they have nowhere to go in the industries, right? So they go into these service sectors. And when they do that, what is that? That's not productive capital adding value to the commodities, right? That is instead constant capital that is already pre-configured into the price. So what does that do? More asset price inflation. So even people having to get jobs pushes these prices up and wages down. And then when you factor in the Fed, and I mean, I could go on forever and ever and ever about this, but the point is, this is a tipping point of revolutionary potential in this country. And the idea now is that we need to sort of find a way within the proletariat to reorganize ourselves along with the giant reproletariat.
Absolutely. And I think part of the problems that we find in socialist organizations is that this reproletariat has sustained some of the middle class consciousness of the previous period. And so, even though its material conditions have changed, its ideology has lagged behind that transformation. And so, its rejection of capitalism is done with the instinct of a middle class rejection, middle class,
Precisely.
a middle class form of sociality. And that brings problems. So it's not that that sector, that reproletariat, ought not to be organized. It has to be organized. The PMC sections of it have to, of course, be organized, and they play a role. But they need to lose that middle class consciousness, which arose when they had that moment of stability, when they were, as Marx, Engels, and Lenin would say, bourgeoisified workers that had that anxiety that is tied to being a proletarian from the start of its taking form as a majority class under capitalism. That anxiety that's tied to it was virtually lost. I was talking to Paul about this yesterday. We published a review and development of the analysis of the purity fetish, and a big section of it was extending on the analysis that you and Gus Hall have brought forth of petty bourgeois radicalism and the reproletariat. And we talked about it, and he's got 2 masters, and he's finishing the dissertation works. That means he's basically done with the PhD. I got a master. I'm basically done with the PhD. I'm doing dissertation work as well, finishing that up. In the 1950s, that would have us be in line with a very cushy job. Very, very good job opportunities. And today, where does it have us? Well, in a market that when I graduate, I know there's going to be 5 times as many people looking for a job than available jobs. And out of those available jobs, the vast majority of them are going to be as adjunct professors, which is a very precarious, super exploitative form of existence as a teacher worker. So it's, I and Paul are part of that reproletariat, right? And part of the things that we have to try to get in the habit of doing is losing the social consciousness of middle class radicalism, which is so instinctually arising at a moment where their material conditions are changing, but the substance of the consciousness is still middle class.
This is precisely the contradiction. What Carlos just said is incredibly important, guys. Here's the thing with the reproletarianization that is happening. Just look around, right? Is happening at such a rapid pace that people now, right, who grow up, enter the workforce, and they're, $80,000 in debt, making $13 an hour, where the cost of living has them spending 80% of that on rent and then 20% on food, right? That is sort of, because that's happening so fast, it's all within one generation, one person. So you grow up with this middle class social consciousness.
Yeah.
That's what builds you. That's the neighborhoods you were in. That's how your parents were. But now you're not in that anymore because of the rapidity of this happening. And so it takes, frankly, the special skills of the middle classes to be able to, dedicate time to thinking about this, to purposefully change your worldview. And that's where learning Marxism can really, really help. Does Carlos there seem like a middle class guy to you? Of course not. That is the sort of latent potential within the reproletariat.
The middle class wears Six Flags tank tops.
The Looney Tunes thing reminds me of when I was like 14. Looney Tunes shirts were huge. And that's also when the rap group Crisscross was big. Have you ever heard of them?
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever heard of the Crisscross? You know them?
Yes, they were the one that had their own gear and everything.
Yeah, well, yeah, they were like 12 years old and they wore all their clothes backwards.
Yeah.
So, like all the Looney Tunes things had like Bugs Bunny wearing his clothes backwards. That's why they were crisscross. Anyway.
Reclaim Asinine. God damn it. But it's
I'm pretty sure, like, I don't even know why he watches us. But
it has been an extremely quick transition.
Yeah,
right? And it's almost nauseating for a lot of people, and it doesn't make sense. Like, oh my God, I did everything right. But the prospects are still shit. And that situation which you described, my paycheck is $1,400 a month. That's 9 months out of the year. My rent is $1,200. My food is quite a bit because I got a family of 3 and I'm the only income. And if it weren't for food stamps, babies ain't cheap. So if it weren't for food stamps, your boy would be starving. So that's the condition I'm in as someone with a master's degree, finishing PhD, that did everything quote unquote right. And it might be even harder once I graduate. There's literal people in the humanities specifically that are staying longer than they should be because at least they have that job guarantee. Once they graduate, there's no guarantee that they'll get a job even as an adjunct. So it's a very, very scary position, and it's tending it's making a lot of these people question the system that they exist in, get active in socialist activism, but it's done with that middle class consciousness, and I think it could be overcome.
And it keeps what the problem is, the middle class prejudices are apparent.
Yes.
Right? That is sort of the problem we always bring up of leftist organizations running themselves like an HR meeting. Right? And so then when working class people come in, there's a huge culture clash and they lose the proletariat in that moment every time. Now, let's also be like clear that most of these aren't reproletarian, right? They are instead the middle classes. They're still stable and comfortable, and they still have, enough to save and have like a stability, right? The stability is what's key here, and it's stability. And I explained this in the Reproletarianization paper, actually, why stability and its lack and the ability, as Marx says, to do nothing other than sell your labor for a wage is central to what the proletariat became. And that was the key component. A lot of us sort of we go to a more empiricist view where your class is not a relation with others that must produce certain outcomes. It is instead what your job is. It is instead, rather than the relations of production, your individual relations to production, right? So I'm a proletarian because I work for a wage and get exploited by my boss, rather than I'm a proletarian because I am part of a giant group of people whose material interests being fulfilled directly depends on the material interests of another class being overcome by it. They are that same process. And that is what creates the proletariat rather than, being a wage worker or whatever else. It is a dialectical view, right? That's where class comes from. It's not sort of the bourgeois view, right? This is what led Marx to his big discovery that he talked about himself when he said no credit was due him for the discovery of classes or the struggle between them. What he did was understand that different eras produce different classes which struggle in different ways. It is that motion that creates everything. Sorry for the ramble.
No, that was wonderfully said, brother. And I think that might be a good way to end it. Do you have anything that you want to plug? Anything else that we want to get off the chest before we go?
This coming Tuesday is going to be another fantastic Basics of Marxism. My article in Newsweek is still there, even though it's no longer on the front page. And the paper on this will be out within the next couple weeks. I've had to sort of, as it was nearing finish, put it on the back burner to focus on the class. But I'm kind of crossing my fingers that the class is going to vote in favor of read-alongs rather than lectures, because those just take a lot more writing, right? So
I think you're still you're putting way too much work into it. That's a mistake I made when I started teaching. I had the lectures all written down, and I just approach teaching now, and I have one sheet of notes, various themes I want to touch, maybe a couple quotes that I'd like to hit, and then just a series of questions to get the ball rolling. But I do think the lectures are valuable for various reasons, the way that you're approaching it, but it's still a hell of a lot of work. It's going to be easier the second time around because you already have the lectures prepared, so that might be a good argument in favor of continuing to have a written lecture. But
well, either way, I'm going to have a sort of modern language synopsis of socialism, utopian, and scientific. So maybe we can put that together as sort of a pamphlet for people.
maybe no, we will.
Okay.
So no maybes here. Thank you, Kajar Vaughn. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, but thank you so much.
That's
We
okay.
appreciate the donation very, very much. And thank you, Battle Cossack, once again, with the 225, I believe, Australian currency. The shining path of Peru supports Ukraine. That's what they said in their official magazine. Yeah, I mean, I published in a magazine that had previous old Shining Path uh, people in Peru, but yeah, the two communist parties there are, from what I've heard from our comrades over there, communists in name and not in substance, which is might be a condition we might resemble here in the U.S. But
we don't know anything about that. People saying they're communists and actually being the worst kind of right opportunists.
yeah,
Who, lie and cheat, and we don't know anything about that. No.
right. But that's why a lot of my good Marxist-Leninist friends from Peru, they're in Peru Libre, which is the communist party that's rooted in the agrarian proletariat and in the masses, and not in the cosmopolitan, woke, liberal left. And that tension was seen very clearly with Castillo, and they were calling him a fascist and a reactionary because he wasn't the most woke on LGBTQ issues. Even though he said that he'll allow those issues to be decided democratically, so he won't be in favor or against it. He was just like an old school Christian peasant with some socialistic leanings. His party was definitely a lot more advanced in terms of consciousness than him, but yeah, and it's a split we're seeing more and more between self-proclaimed socialist or communist organizations that stand primarily with wokeism and cosmopolitan values, and on the other side, the masses that can continue to live on in the old way and that are looking for new forms of political engagement to overthrow the existing state of affairs. And um, something similar might be going on here. So I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but yeah, thank you for that donation and for the comment.
Yeah, I think. Oh, yeah, I actually clicked that off because someone gave me some good advice. But I think that's spot on, brother. I think here's the issue. More and more, we seem to be lines are being drawn. There are the sort of woke cosmopolitanism, middle class. The remnants of the middle class are the majority of these leftists, right? Who call themselves communists, but have no connection to the people, and in fact look down on the people, and that's part of that middle class thing, right? And then there are the impure, as of yet disorganized mass of the reproletariat and proletariat who can no longer go on in the old way. And these two are butting heads and will continue to do so until we can get a real good reproletarian movement going that can overcome the middle class. That's how I see it anyway.
It's bound to happen, I think. And it's already happening in various spaces. And some of the best critiques that we've seen of this phenomenon is coming from the middle classes themselves, the PMC themselves. So I don't think they'll be immune to that form of consciousness, but there are lines being drawn between who's with the people and who's with the woke side of the elite. And I think it's decisive that in every instance, your faith has to be with the people and with the potential of the people to move in a direction that puts humanity forward and puts human emancipation on the table.
It absolutely. Here's the last thing I'll say. I'm sorry, brother. I know you're trying to end it. There's always some excuse. That is how you can tell the real from the sort of people embodying this bourgeois ideology. There's always an excuse to, be a purity fetishist. And you go, look, we have to be with the real movement of the people and try to embody this and steer it in the direction of socialism. And they go, yeah, but this time, no. Every single time there will be a reason.
Absolutely, brother. And we're seeing that now with Cornel. It's always, I like him, but. Yeah, I like him, but. And then here's some impurity that's half of the times not even an impurity. Like the one that they're going to have to go to now is, but we have this fascist threat, and that's why we have to vote Biden, and Cornell's going to steal votes from Biden, which virtually means, as Garland Nixon, correctly said in an interview with Dr. Montero recently, that the Democratic Party feels that it is entitled to the votes of the people, and specifically black people who would be going towards Cornel West. That means that they feel like black people are indebted to them. They are indebted to their vote, and that is a form of what he called the Democratic Party plantation. I think we have to bring that contradiction more and more out into the air. And any argument that's coming from anyone who claims to be a communist and that says, oh no, but he's going to make Biden lose and he's going to take away votes from Biden. When you hear that, you know that person is not a communist. They're either not a communist in an insidious fashion, they're trying to lie to you and make you ignorant and stupid about what communism actually is, or they are too ignorant to call themselves a communist. Not everyone that calls themselves a communist is a communist, though.
Or another good way to be able to tell this is they act as if they're better than those actually in the real world getting shit done, right? They're like, oh, them, they are too small time for me. The guy who just had one of the biggest announcements for a presidential run ever is just, I can't take him seriously, right? Oh, look at me. Look at all of my accomplishments and how many millions of Americans know mine. Oh, none?
He's a wrecker, Noah. He supported Nader and Stein. He's a wrecker. Communism is about voting for the Democratic Party. Woke liberalism equals communism. How can you be
wrecker of the Democrat?
God damn it. He's a wrecker. Don't you know that? He's a deeply unserious person.
I had no idea. I'm so sorry.
I hope people get the reference. I really hope people get the fucking reference. But
I think they might.
All right, folks. It's been a
People
wonderful...
are welcome to come at us anytime, by the way. Happily have some conversations.
Yeah. Same here, brother. But thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Noah, for coming on. And it's been a very enjoyable and enlightening conversation. But all right, folks, we're going to be going out to the international the same way that we came in. So salute the red flag and see ya.
And economic injustice cannot be solved without a radical redistribution of political and economic power.